Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we had the incredible privilege to read Parashas Bereishis. You know, when we come to Bereishis, the Parasha, the time of year, is filled with so much excitement and so much renewal and so many possibilities for what we are going to build in the year to come. But this week, this Parashas Bereishis, everything that's happened since this past Shabbos has thrown us to a certain degree into a tailspin. Kind of not knowing what to feel, not knowing how to experience, not knowing how to process everything that is unfolding right in front of us. That on one hand, we've seen such devastating loss of Klal Yisrael. We've seen such carnage. We've seen such barbaric behavior. We've seen images and we've heard stories that feel like they belong in the 1940s in Europe, and not in 2023, not in Tafshin Pei Dalid in Eretz Yisrael. And on the other hand, we've seen such an incredible outpouring of Achdus, such Jewish unity, such love, such togetherness, such national cohesion. So on one hand, there's heartbreak, and on the other hand, there's inspiration. And of course, I've mentioned this many times throughout the past week. The Jewish heart is capable of experiencing these opposite emotions simultaneously. The Jew knows how to feel broken and how to feel whole, how to feel sad and how to feel happy, how to feel totally demolished and yet built up. The Jewish heart has the ability for this simultaneity of emotion, the ability to live in different spaces at the same time, the ability to shed tears, and in those same tears are heartbreak and also happiness. And so we come to Parashas Bereishis. Bereishis, which is the parasha of building. It's the parasha of building and the parasha of rebuilding. It's building Bereishis, Bara Elokim es Hashemayim v'Haaretz, Hashem built something beautiful, magnificent and new. And it's the parasha of rebuilding. Adam and Chava go ahead and commit their Aveira. They are cast out of Gan Eden, and they are forced to rebuild a new life together. Within one parasha, a brand new world, to a certain degree a destroyed world, and then Adam and Chava rebuilding that world. But I want to draw your attention to something, I don't know why it never struck me before. I don't know why I never really took notice of it before. But this time, as learning the parasha, it really resonated in my heart and soul. The pasuk says, this is in Perek Beis, pasuk Zayin, still towards the end of the 7 days of creation, but still the beginning of the parasha. Torah speaks about the creation of man. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam afar min ha'adama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man, afar, literally dust from the earth. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. He blew breath into man, literally blew divine breath into man's nostrils. Vayhi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. And man became a living entity. And again, we're familiar with this pasuk. The Rebbe Shalom's creation of man, afar, the Rebbe Shalom took earth, fashioned it into a human being, breathed life into the nostrils of man, and man becomes a nefesh chaya. Rashi HaKadosh makes an interesting observation. Rashi says the word vayitzer, which literally means, Unkelus translates it as bira, to create or to go ahead and fashion. Talking about Hashem's creation of man, vayitzer is written with two yuds. Two yuds. Now normally if you're writing the word vayitzer, you'd write it vav yud tzadik reish. Again, Perek Beis, pasuk Zayin, chapter 2, verse 7. You would normally write it one yud, yet it's written with two yuds. What's the pshat? And listen to Rashi. Rashi says, Shtei Yitziros. There are actually two acts of creation that are embedded in this one creation of man. The double Yud represents two acts of creation. What are the two acts of creation? Yitzira le'olam hazeh, v'yitzira le'tchias hamesim. There's a creation of life in this world, and then there's a creation for the resurrection of the dead in the world to come. L'tchias hamesim, in the Messianic era. Incredible. Rashi HaKadosh says that the two yuds are merames. They hint to the double creation of man. One yitzira, this life, this world. And the second yitzira, the second creation, tchias hamesim. Resurrection of the dead when Mashiach comes, Emirat Hashem Bekarav. And the Sisei Chachamim writes something amazing. He comments on this, and he says, Ratzah Lomar, Sheniton bo koach chiyuni, shegam la'achar sheyamus, Yuchal lachzor v'lachios beratzon Hashem Yisbarach. The Rosh programmed within us, He programmed within man, that after we die, there's another life force that brings us back in the Messianic era during Tchias HaMesim. Obviously, he says this only happens if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wills it to happen. But the Ribono Shel Olam pre-programmed us for two creations. Creation in this world and creation in the Messianic era with Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. And I was blown away by this Rashi. I guess part of the reason I was blown away by this Rashi is, for me, it felt like a little bit of a nechama, a little bit of a consolation. You know, when people we love die, and when people we love are murdered, and when I say people we love, we don't know their names, we don't know who they are, so many of them. It doesn't matter, they're our brothers and sisters in Klal Yisrael. The profound sadness, the profound loss is the finality of death. The finality of death. Death is the end of the journey of life. That's it, it's done. It's done. Whatever I didn't do, it's done. And here HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, it's not done. Vayitzer. There are two yods. There are two acts of creation. There's a creation of life in this world, and embedded within us is a second creation for the Messianic era, for the world to come. Embedded within us is a second creation for Tchias HaMesim. Death is not the end. Death is not the end. Death is the end of one stage. Death is the end of one life. But embedded within every single precious Jew is the code for another life, for a Tchias HaMesim. We just don't know when that is going to occur. I don't know. Maybe it's me trying to make myself feel a little bit better about the overwhelming circumstances that have befallen our people. But at least I'm able to feel in my heart that which has been lost, it hasn't been lost forever. It hasn't been lost forever. Vayitzer, the double yod, there's another creation embedded within each of us. But I think that there's another lesson. Maybe a little bit of homiletic license in how to read Rashi. Rashi says the two yods represent ultimately, again, two creations. Again, Yitzira la'olam hazeh, that's life in this world, we know that. And then there's Yitzira, the Tchias HaMesim. And maybe Tchias HaMesim doesn't just mean resurrection of the dead of the Messianic era. But Tchias HaMesim also means there's a Tchia, there's an extra dimension of life that comes to us, the living, through the Mesim. When we see the sacrifices of Klal Yisrael, when we see the losses of Klal Yisrael, and it's on one hand it's the loss, but it's the sacrifices. You know, we read the accounts of the soldiers, of the brave Chayalim, who ran into harm's way, protecting civilians with their bodies, running into no idea what they're running into. The Mesiras Nefesh, the ultimate dying al Kiddush Hashem. There's a Tchias HaMesim. It awakens something. The dead awaken something within the living. Chevra, I think we'd all agree, we're different people. Something has changed inside of me. If you ask me to identify what it is, I don't know exactly what it is. But something has changed. And if you try to give words that time, you know what I would call it? I'd call it Tchias HaMesim. I say Tchia, something has been awakened within me. There's some new dimension of life that has been awakened within me because of the Mesim, because of those who Klal Yisrael has sacrificed. There's something that has been awakened within us as individuals, and something that has been awakened within us as a klal, as a nation. And we have to make sure that we capitalize on this tchiyah, that we somehow maximize this awakening. Because, Chevra, I want to tell you something, and this may sound terrible and crazy, but you know, at a certain point in time, this will recede into our national subconscious. It will recede into our personal subconscious. The Ribono Shel Olam has programmed us with the ability to forget. The ability to forget. You think about it, the Holocaust, the Holocaust, the Shoah, the 6 million Kedoshim was less than a century ago. It doesn't necessarily occupy a part on our primary consciousness. I might live with it somewhere in my subconscious, but it recedes. And part of this is the koach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us to take things and push them to the subconscious. Otherwise, we'd be unable to go on in life. Otherwise, we'd be able to move forward. And I know right now that sounds totally incomprehensible because this tragedy, this war is front and foremost on our minds. But there will come a time, whether it's months or whether it's years, in which it will recede. There are times, and there will be a time in which the Kedoshim of Kibbutz Be'eri and the other communities by the Gaza border, they'll recede. Those memories will recede for those of us outside of the immediate sphere of influence. And that's tragic, because as those memories recede, the hisorus, the tchia, the life that comes from it, will also ebb away. And that's why our avoda right now is to experience a tchias hamesim, a tchia, a new dimension on how we live from the mesim, from those who have died al kiddush Hashem. We each have to reach down deep within ourselves to discover something different, to bring out something new, to bring out some new koach within ourselves, to be different, to live different, to go ahead and recognize that this has been for many of us the most jarring and overwhelming and tragic and heartbreaking experience of our entire lives. But it is not enough to watch the news, and it's not enough just to be informed. That's important. But there has to be a tchias hamesim. There has to be some new dimension in my life because of what I've seen going on around me. And the Ribono Shel Olam programmed us with this ability. 2 yuds, 2 yetziras, 2 creations. A creation olam hazeh, and a creation ultimately again of Tchias HaMesim. And yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pre-programmed us with the ability to come back when Mashiach comes. And He also programmed us to attain new dimensions and new levels of the way we live when we see the Mesim, when we see the Karbanos, when we see the dead of Klal Yisrael. Chavra, this is our avodah going in to Parshas Bereishis. For each of us in our own way to experience a Tchias HaMesim. What is my new dimension of life that I am bringing out as a result of the maves, of the misa, of the death, of the carnage that I've seen happen to my people? We have to experience a Tchias HaMesim. And halavai we should be zocha that if each of us experiences our own personal Tchias HaMesim, if there's a part of us that comes to life because of the sacrifices of Klal Yisrael, then Amirat Hashem, may we be zocha to see the ultimate Tchias HaMesim. May we be zocha, Amirat Hashem, to see the actualization of the second yud of Vayitzer, to see that day when Mashiach comes. All of those who have been lost, all of those who have been taken, will Amirat Hashem come back to us, and Klal Yisrael will once again be whole. That Tchias HaMesim could happen if we Amirat Hashem do our Tchias HaMesim now. May our soldiers be safe and secure in all of their endeavors. May they be successful in all of their missions. And may the Amirat Hashem come home to their families b'shalom. May our brothers and sisters of Eretz Yisrael find the strength and find the chizuk to continue to weather this storm and to be such a light onto the nations and a light onto us in diaspora. May the shvuyim, those being held captive, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu be poded, and may the Ribono Shel Olam bring them back home to their families, and may they come home whole and complete, both in body and in soul. And halavai we should be zocha once again, that in the schus of our Tchias HaMesim, be zocha to the great day of the Tchias HaMesim, with the coming of Mashiach Mihir Rabbi Ameinu Amen. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Nechama-filled Shabbos Kodesh.